Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is grasp. Let's take a look at some of the definitions or ways that we use this verb. The first way you might hear grasp used is to mean to take into one's hands and to hold firmly. Right? So, as you read particular stories, you might hear about a character grasping a hand or an arm of another character. A second way you might hear grasp used is to mean to comprehend fully. So, with this second definition, it very much ties to the verb understand. So, here we're really looking for kind of like a deep understanding of something. A third way you might hear grasp used is to mean to act decisively in order to gain an advantage. The first two definitions here are more commonly used, and so most of my examples will tie to one of those two. You should know that grasp is a regular verb. To make the progressive form, all you need to do is add ing to form grasping. The past tense and participle forms of this verb can be made by adding ed. Our base verb, grasp, ends in an unvoiced P sound. So our past tense ending is going to make a T sound. It should sound like this: grasped, grasped. Okay. Now, let's take a moment to look at some phrasal verbs that use grasp. One you might hear quite often is to grasp at. This can have a couple different meanings. One would be that someone is trying or attempting to hold on to or to grip something. An example of this. I saw a sentence like this describing a particular play in American football. The lineman grasped at the running back's legs but missed. Right? So we can kind of imagine, right, somebody trying to hold or grasp at this other player's legs. A second way you'll hear grasp at is to mean that someone is trying to take or to get something. They're doing it very eagerly, maybe even a bit desperately. So, an example of this, they're grasping at any possible solution. Right? So, there's some kind of a problem and it needs to be solved very quickly. And they're going to try and think of anything that would lead to that solution or that fix. Another phrasal verb you might hear is to grasp by. This ties back to that definition of trying to hold something. And again, kind of with a firm grip. What comes after the preposition by is generally the part of one's body or the thing that someone is trying to take hold of. So, an example of this: he grasped the student by the shoulders to get his attention. Right? So, you can imagine someone kind of taking hold, having a firm grip on one's shoulders. Now, let's continue using our verb of the day, grasp, in a couple different verb tenses. Today, we're going to practice the simple present and the simple future using will. We'll start with the simple present. We use this verb tense to talk about our habits and routines. It's also commonly used to discuss facts. The trickiest thing about the simple present is that our form of the verb is going to change based on what our subject is. So if our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're just going to use the base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, then we're going to add an S to the end of this verb. And you can see that in my example here. She always grasps at her mother's hand before crossing the street. Right? So maybe we're talking about a small child here who has a very good habit, I would say, of taking a firm grip, taking a firm hold of her mother's hand before crossing busy streets. Now, if we want to make a negative sentence in the simple present, Our structure, again, is going to depend on what our subject is. If our subject is I, you, we, or they, we're going to use do not and then the base verb. But if our subject is he, she, or it, we're going to use does not and then the base verb. So notice I'm not adding an S to the end of the verb here in the negative. An example of this might be, he doesn't grasp the challenges we face. Okay, so here, this would tie back to that definition of comprehending, understanding. He doesn't understand the challenges we face. Now let's look at making yes or no questions in the simple present. To do this, we're going to start with do or does, whichever form matches our subject. The subject comes next. Then we're going to use the base verb. So again, no S on the end of the verb in our yes or no question. We're only doing that in the affirmative. An example of a yes or no question in the simple present might be, do voters grasp the importance of the midterm elections? So, I think I heard about 132 days, the U.S. Is going to have a large set of elections, and people are asking if voters understand, comprehend in a deep way how important these elections are. Now let's take a look at the simple future. Today we're going to focus on using will. It's very common to hear will used with promises and with predictions. You might also hear it with an offer as well. And the nice thing about this form of the simple future is that we're going to have a subject, we're going to use will, and then we're going to use the base form, and that's it. Okay, so it doesn't matter what our subject is, our structure will stay the same. You can see this in my example sentence. They will grasp at any lie in order to support their point of view. So here's my phrasal verb again, grasp at. This sentence very much connects to that idea of someone feeling kind of desperate or rather eager. So this sentence is suggesting. We can almost envision someone trying to grab hold or have a grip of something that supports his or her beliefs. Now, if I want to make a negative simple future sentence using will, my structure will be to have my subject, then will not, and then the base verb. You might also hear people use the contraction form. You can see that in my example here. The leader won't grasp this logic. Okay, so another sentence about comprehending, understanding, and logic here, maybe it helps to think of like reasoning. Now let's look at making a yes or no question in the simple future. Our structure for this will be to start with will, then we're going to have our subject, and then the base verb. Here's another example question. Will the students grasp the importance of this lesson? So again, back to that meaning of comprehending or understanding. Now let's spend a few minutes looking at some words in a phrase related to our verb grasp. And the first word we're going to look at has the exact same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. We're just going to use the word grasp as a noun. And like the verb, the noun has a few different meanings. When we use the noun grasp, we could be referring to a firm hold or grip of something. An example of this, get a good grasp of the rope, right? So someone is giving a command, using the imperative there to tell someone to hold something firmly. A second way you'll hear grasp used, it refers to a person's ability or maybe their power to attain or reach something. So you might hear something sort of like success is within their grasp, right? So this idea, they have the ability or maybe they have the power to achieve success in some with regard to some goal. A third way we use the noun grasp is to refer to someone's understanding. An example of this: do you have a good grasp of English verb tenses? Right? Do you have a good understanding of them? That's what that's asking. The next word we'll look at is the noun grasper. This can be a person or it could be a tool that grasps, that holds something firmly. An example of this might be: scientists have created a robotic grasper to assist during surgeries. Another word you might hear is the adjective graspable. This means that something is capable of being understood. So, an example of this: the story is written in a way that is graspable for everyone. So, this is implying it could be easily understood, younger readers to older readers. The last phrase we're going to look at today is to grasp at straws. Okay, this ties back a little bit to the second definition of grasp at that we looked at. So, that idea of sort of being desperate. So, when this phrase, grasp at straws, is used, it means that someone feels like they are in a very desperate situation. That they're going to resort to something that is unlikely. Many times you'll hear people sort of use this to say that an argument someone is making just makes no sense. It's not likely to be true. So, an example of this: somebody is grasping at straws because she knows her re-election campaign is in trouble. I borrowed this sentence from another candidate um, who was discussing her opponent, and criticizing that opponent for certain arguments that the opponent had made. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.